and welcome to Out of the Bag. This is Sean Maguire live on Healing Oracle Radio and People's Internet Radio, and it is the 14th of the 5th, 2021, and I'm doing a pre-record for my Wednesday show on May the 19th, and I'm so glad to have back on the show Sol Luckman, pioneering ink and acrylic painter and acclaimed author of fiction, non-fiction and humour. Award-winning books including Conscious Healing, the follow-up Potentiate Your DNA, Snooze, A Story of Awakening, The Angel's Dictionary, Musings from a Small Island. His new book, CALI the Destroyer, not even released yet until I think the middle of June, is set to become necessary reading. It's a great adventure with many not so hidden messages, and maybe a few hidden ones we might find out. Welcome back to Out of the Bag, Sol Luckman.
Thanks for having me, Sean. It just gives me a warm and fuzzy to connect with you online. I really like your show and your energy, and I appreciate you having me.
Listen, you're more than welcome. And I read your book. I finished it yesterday. And I usually like to do for my guests is read it 2 or 3 times, 3 times to get it into my head. It's not in my head, but guess what? It really is a fun-filled adventure with shitloads of stuff that I think people would like to hear about. What do you think?
Well, I hope you're right. I enjoyed writing it. It was fun. I learned a lot in the process of writing it, and I feel like I conveyed a lot of information of a metaphysical, esoteric, spiritual nature, shamanic also.
Yeah, I mean, you're a long-time researcher of shamanism and spirituality, and was it from John Nash's book? You give it an acknowledgement. That the book Not in His Image, Gnostic Vision, Sacred Ecology and the Future of Belief. Did a lot of information come from that helped you, I suppose, elaborate on a nice storyline?
Sure. What Lash did was to articulate a reinterpretation of the ancient Gnostic texts. He called this reinterpretation the fallen goddess scenario. And it had to do with the idea that the planet that we live on, Earth, also known as Sophia and Gaia, that this planet is actually a living being, a divine being, a female being. Literally, we're talking about Mother Earth. And there are many other elements to the fallen goddess scenario that he outlined in Not in His Image, which is a wonderful book. And so I'm very much indebted to that book and his acumen and his inspiration in bringing through a new way of looking at Gnosticism. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do it so well, and the storyline is fantastic. And the names, of course, you use CALI the Destroyer to be one, Sophia, various other names throughout, which maybe you can explain. I don't know what Thelites is, or Thelites, or...
Thelete is the way I understand that it's pronounced.
How is it pronounced?
Thelete.
You see, I was reading it wrong, even. Okay.
Well, I remember... Hermione is not a name I'm familiar with, and I remember when I was reading Harry Potter, I had all kinds of strange pronunciations of that word in my head.
Yeah, the Hermy one, bless her. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, look, it's an amazing book, and it's got a storyline. I don't want to give out too much, but within it, it picks a lot of reality from today. It takes, I suppose, Orwellian dystopian subtext as well big time it does, and mashes the two together and comes out with an incredible spiritual and physical journey to save the planet. That's basically it, isn't it?
Wow, you should be my copywriter. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what the book's about.
There you go. And I know my listeners are going to absolutely bloody love it. So without spoilers and stuff, how do we proceed with this interview? I mean, do you want to tell us about the main characters maybe? And tell us about CALI, tell us about Juice, tell us about those characters and why they are together, why and where are they? What is that dystopian future or dystopian place you've put us in during CALI the Destroyer? How did it come to be? Can you elaborate on it? Because we're basically... chucked in the tub, aren't we? We're chucked into it straight away. You describe it brilliantly so we know where we are, but how did it get there? Was it really elite families? He said.
Right, yeah. So that comes out over the course of the book, and without giving everything away, it's a futuristic story, right?
Yeah,
And it's set in a dystopian future that certainly has elements of Orwell, elements of Huxley,
yeah, yeah.
elements of Boris Vian's work, L'écume des jours, this wonderful French novel. I think that I forget even the English translation of that, but it was
Okay.
made into a movie with Romain Duris and oh, I forget her name, but she starred in the Da Vinci Code.
Okay, and this could easily be a movie, couldn't it, Sol? I'm sure that's the next step, isn't it?
Yeah, I get that a lot from these early readers
Yeah.
that this really needs to be made into a movie, and hopefully we will live in a world someday where that can happen,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
right now it's hard to imagine anyone with integrity and money being able to take this on in our current cultural hell that we're living in terms of what's going on in Hollywood and other places that make movies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but then there's the reality check, within the book, all the way through the book as well. There's obviously there's it's a massive story of racism, bigotry, sexism, isn't it?
Absolutely, on a colossal scale that really exceeds anything that that we've seen since the time of slavery, I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah, so I haven't given anything away by saying what I said earlier, because I've now chuck a real can of worms out there by saying that. And you try and marry the two together. There's so much ignorance and bliss and intelligence and knowledge running through the whole of the book, that it's a roller coaster as well. And the excitement parts of it, I'm not really into my adventure books, adventure movies. I'm not really into them. But this carried it along because it had that spiritual aspect, believe it or not.
Yeah, that was my goal, or one of my goals was to create a spiritual novel that had a didactic element, not a dogmatic, but a teaching element to
Yeah.
share. First of all, the fallen goddess scenario and this interpretation of Gnosticism that I think is extremely timely, empowering, and important. But I knew that you can't just write about that from a dry perspective, or you'll just recreate Not in His Image by John Lash, right? You have to do something different with that. And I wanted to reach a different audience because as brilliant as Not in His Image is, it is a very academic book.
Yes.
He's
Yes.
a very bright writer
Yeah.
who's done a tremendous amount of research, and he's coming at this kind of like a PhD scholar
Yeah. Yeah.
attacking this material, right? So I wanted to be more like a James Fenimore Cooper and mythologize that story like something like Last of the Mohicans, or I wanted to bring action into the didactic elements,
Yes.
so that I'm teaching history, but I'm also creating something that is like a gripping drama.